Welcome to another episode of Financial Freedom with Tom Hegna, where I introduce to you some of the top financial professionals from around the country, and I'm talking Main Street, not Wall Street. Our next guest is Steve Hutchinson from Scottsdale, Arizona. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Tom.
Now, the audience doesn't know about you, so kind of give us your background. How did you get in the business?
Actually, Tom, I'm second generation in the business. My dad was with Prudential for 13 years while I was growing up. And around age 18, not through Prudential, but through another company, I actually got involved in the industry at that point. And I've been involved in the industry for well over 40 years at this point. But about 10 years ago, I shifted over to developing software for the industry. So that's been my main primary focus for the last decade.
Now, you're kind of known as the advisor's advisor, and that software has helped evaluate billions of dollars of tax-deferred investments, IRAs, 401ks, and I think you said you want to help 1 million people have a tax-free retirement. So that's a lofty goal. Tell me how you're going to get that done.
Yeah, Tom, not actually just by myself. So the way we're going to be able to do that is for the last 6 to 7 months, we've been focusing on a concept and a tool called Roth Blueprint. There's such an opportunity now for people to move from a position where they're going to be having to act reactively to what happens tax-wise over the next few years instead of acting proactively. So we developed the tool, and actually if you properly implement a tax conversion strategy from an IRA to a Roth IRA or a 401k to a Roth IRA, our software and process will help you increase your lifetime income up to 67%. So we're pretty excited about it. And the lofty goal of getting to the 1 million people, our software is advisor driven. So advisors can utilize the software to help people, and they have tools available to them now. But Tom, most of them are just simply doing it completely wrong and not taking advantage of all the different areas of opportunity somebody really has when they're doing a conversion. So we're helping people capitalize on that, and we brought it all together with this Roth Blueprint.
So when is the best time to convert from an IRA to a Roth IRA?
Generally speaking, there's a window from the time that you stop working to about the time that you start RMDs, or around age 70. So we kind of call that the golden era, the window of opportunity that you have. So that period between 60 and 70 is really the optimum time to take advantage of that before the RMDs kick in, and then your income can start increasing. If you kind of think about it, over your lifetime, you start losing deductions. Your children, they grow up, they move out of the house, maybe you pay your home off, so you lose the mortgage deduction. And then as you get older and you start into your retirement, you start being subjected to RMDs, where you're forced to take more and more and more out of your retirement so the government can collect that tax. And then what eventually happens is if one or the other spouse dies, then the remaining spouse is left as a single taxpayer, which drives them back up into the very highest tax bracket. And then with the direction that we're going with the national debt, already at 36 trillion, potentially being 60 trillion by the time we get out to 2034. If you look at that, it's kind of like a reverse force multiplier or negative force multiplier. And the force multiplier isn't for good. It's actually destructive to your personal finances and your ability to have your retirement savings last your lifetime.
So how does the blueprint get me from point A to point B without actually hurting my financial situation?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we really looked at in designing this is how do we also make sure we remove the negatives during that conversion process. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of advisors are simply getting this wrong or making the problem worse. An area that you have to really kind of focus on as an advisor or a CPA, or even as a consumer, if you're trying to do this conversion, is this exciting area called marginal tax bracket management. And what it essentially means, Tom, is that there's tax brackets. If you think of one cup kind of flowing into another cup, there's these marginal tax brackets, and the way the tax code is set up, for instance, the 22% tax bracket goes all the way to $206,700. I believe it is. Don't quote me on that, but I think I'm within a few dollars. $206,700. So if you have $100,000 income coming into your household, you have $106,700 additional income before you move into the next tax bracket. So that $106,700 you can use to do a conversion or to use towards a conversion. So if you don't use it, you lose it, and you're risking the chance of later on when you try to take that money out, that's going to be at a much higher tax bracket. Now, there's something that we call the 24% rule, Tom, and what this identifies is the fact that that 24% tax bracket, so you go from 22 for just 2 marginal tax points more, you can move into that 24% tax bracket, and now you go all the way up to $394,600. So now you have all this additional money that you can convert over and essentially stay in that 24% tax bracket, which historically speaking is insanely low. I mean, the top tax brackets in the past, in the 60s, different points were as high as 90%. And as you stated earlier, we're probably going to be going back more towards that direction. So what you need to do is you need to evaluate, we call it assess the situation, and I'll tell you here in a second about a little acronym that I was taught by a Navy SEAL that it's kind of part of the planning process that we have with the Roth Blueprint.
Very good. Now, with some conversions, there tend to be some constraints and legal requirements. Like, how do you handle all those different constraints?
Right. Yeah, when we were programming the software, Tom, we use this concept of constraints. And so most people, they don't want to pay the tax, and they don't want to pay the tax out of another pocket. So if I've been accumulating money, I have my IRA, maybe my IRA has $500,000 in it, and maybe I have $120,000 set over here in a money market account. Well, maybe I have a special trip plan with my family or a remodel plan or something. That money's earmarked for something. So then if an advisor says, okay, well, you need to take your IRA, we're going to convert that, but we want you to take half of the money you've been saving for things in your lifestyle you've been saving for your entire life and use that to pay the tax. Well, now that creates a problem. So the first constraint that we built into the program is if you have $500,000 or $1 million in an IRA, we don't want that balance to ever reduce below that amount. Second constraint is we don't want you to have to reach into that other account that you've been earmarking for something else in your life to pay the tax. So the software calculates it and utilizes the IRA and the money within the IRA itself to pay the tax and help with the conversion. So essentially, we do the conversion without ever reducing the balance in that IRA account and without you having to reach into another pocket to pay the tax. And the third constraint that we operate around is making sure you don't increase above the marginal tax bracket that we pre-select with you as part of that assessment process, so you don't go above that 24% tax bracket, for instance, if we're following that 24% rule. So in essence, if I can take your $500,000 IRA, Tom, and convert it without you having to reach into another pocket to pay the tax, ever reducing the balance below the original $500,000 or increasing your marginal tax bracket, is there any reason in the world you wouldn't want to at least consider the idea of moving that money to tax-free so you have a better chance of that money lasting the rest of your life?
Absolutely. People should be doing this. And because you're doing it in smaller chunks, right? You don't do it necessarily all in one time. You're staying within that 24% rule. So that gives you really maximum amount that you can move, and you can do it over a period of 2 or 3 years and then just keep that tax rate lower.
Absolutely. And our software takes all that into consideration. We want to do a smooth transition so you're not jumping up into that other tax bracket. So it's a smooth transition. That's why people really need to be planning now, Tom, because in doing that smooth transition, you can't wait till the last minute right before tax rates are changing. So like if all of a sudden we find out tax rates are changing next year, it's too late. You need to have some runway to get this done effectively, or you're going to annihilate the advantages because you're going to have to go to a higher tax bracket to get the conversion completed.
So, I mean, it seems like most people should really seriously consider these Roth IRA conversions. Why are there some advisors out there almost advising against it?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting out there. I've been around the industry obviously a long time, and I don't know if you read the book Freakonomics back in 1994, Stephen Levitt. Interesting book talking about perverse incentives, and they talked about some real estate situations and real estate commissions. But if you think about it, a financial advisor or money manager that happens to be managing your retirement account, they earn their fees based on the total assets under management. Now, when you have an IRA, you don't actually have an IRA account yourself. You have something called a joint account. and the joint account is between you and the IRS. So you have this joint account situation. Now, if you want to get the IRS off of the account, you need to pay the tax, which is going to reduce the account size, as part of that conversion process. So if you have $1 million that's being managed by a financial advisor, maybe he's making 1.5% total fees on that $1 million, it's really not an incentive for him to have you pay the tax, even though it might be an advantage for you long term. And what's really funny is it'd really be an advantage for him long term, because you'll end up with much more money over a longer period of time. But based on the short-term incentive, they don't want to reduce that pile of money from the million down to a smaller amount, because it's going to reduce their compensation, and that's how they're incentivized.
Now, as you know, Steve, life happens. There's triggering events. Are there some events, life events, that can trigger whether somebody should or shouldn't really consider a Roth conversion?
If you're in that window where you're not taking your Social Security distributions, you're not taking RMDs, and you have a potential for that income to dip, you can more effectively do that Roth conversion during that time, because of the fact that you have more tax bracket to work with. So the sooner you start assessing the situation, and it's kind of interesting. So we have something we call ACTE cycles, and it starts, and I learned this from a former SEAL Team 3 member, Richard Makowicz. He was a Deadliest Weapons. He was on that show. Unfortunately, he died of brain cancer here a few years ago. But he had this ACTE cycle, and it stands for assess the situation. And so assessing the situation, that's the blueprint. You put your basic numbers into the blueprint and you assess the situation. Then you want to create a simple plan. So a simple plan is you want to evaluate, calculate your marginal tax rate, and open up probably a Roth-friendly account that allows you to easily convert at any pace that you want to. So you create a simple plan, then you take action. So once you're taking action and you're doing this, the fourth and final step is evaluate. And so with us, we evaluate every year, how much did we convert last year? Did the income change? Did the tax brackets change? Is there anything changing that we need to evaluate right now? Then you basically repeat the cycle. So you assess the situation, create a simple plan, take action, and evaluate. And it was designed for high stress situations in life. Me personally, I went through a situation here 2 years ago. I was given 6 months to live. And it was appendiceal cancer, stage 4, and I was told I was inoperable, and that was basically it. So it doesn't take very long to assess the situation. You're in a lot of trouble. Your raft has a hole in it. And my daughter actually found, so the first step was, the simple plan was, we need to find a surgeon that will operate on me. I know they say I can't, but the situation's dire. If I don't get operated on, I'm going to die. And my daughter scoured the planet and found one surgeon at Stanford that agreed to operate on me. So it's going to be tough. It was a 15-hour surgery. They removed my appendix, my gallbladder, my spleen, resection my pancreas, on and on and on. I was in the hospital for 3 months. I lost 70 pounds down to 130 pounds. But that was the simple plan. We took action on it, got me ready to make it through that surgery, and then evaluate, and then did the chemotherapy, went through the cycles again and again and again. But when you're in high stress situation, you need to have a plan where you can immediately grab what's going on around you and take action. Because what people do is they do a process called looping, where they start looping with the information and they can't make a decision, they get stuck in a loop. And so to break out of that, you go through these ATCE cycles. And so that's what I did. But it's important for everybody to take a step. And for us, that step is you get a Roth blueprint and you can evaluate your situation or assess the situation. From there, then we can help you through the next steps if it's appropriate.
Now, if somebody's sitting here saying, man, I should be doing some of this stuff, what are the steps they should take to move forward?
It's real simple. We've set up a website called rothblueprint.com. It asks basically 10 assessment questions for you. You put that information in, and it doesn't just say, hey, this would be a good idea for you. It actually shows you how much tax-free income you could create for yourself in the future, and basically gives you the dollar amount to work with.
So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk to some advisors for a while. And how does this software work with them? Like, how can they put some of this software to work for them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I talk to advisors, every day, all day long. And advisors have very expensive software they're utilizing to do Roth conversions, and there's some really great software out there designed for CPAs and accounting firms. They're not designed for the financial world, and particularly the world where advisors and agents are providing lifetime guaranteed income. There's another huge opportunity in utilizing a bonus by the financial institutions or insurance companies to offset the tax for the client. But none of the currently available software takes that into account and shows the effects of that. And everything's connected to everything else. If you change one factor in a calculation between now and 95 for somebody, you have to redo all the numbers because you change one factor, it changes everything else. So if your software can't account for the bonus or account for the lifetime guaranteed income or account for increasing lifetime guaranteed income, and you don't have a way to compare that, for instance, Tom, our software, you can have a bonus. And for instance, if a client has a 15% bonus on $1 million account, our software will show you the dollar value of that bonus over the course of age 95 on that $1 million is $897,000. So you draw that comparison and drive a wedge between doing it one way or doing it the way that you're recommending. So we have some amazing tools, but the software doesn't empower you to show the value of those tools to the client.
Now you use seminars too. Kind of talk about that.
Absolutely. Been doing seminars for years, and the seminar environment is phenomenal because it gives you a time, that you can share these concepts with 30 people, 1 to 30 instead of one-on-one, and it's much more impactful because you create, reciprocity and authority and confidence in that audience because you're there face-to-face with them in person. Teach them the concepts and meet with them. Utilize the software, generate a blueprint for them, deliver the blueprint, and help them assess that situation.
So Steve, let's go a little deeper into that software. How do you really optimize those bonuses? Because I mean, that's money that the insurance company is providing that then could be used to pay taxes or whatever. So get into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's the annuity Roth conversion fit is perfect because you can take advantage of the bonus. You don't have to worry about the 10% exceeding the 10% free withdrawals because this is, a lifetime situation that we're planning for. They save their money in the IRA for the purpose of that being that stable base of lifetime income. You eliminate the volatility problem because with a properly structured, simplified accumulation annuity, the downside's protected. And then you also are taking care of the longevity problem. So that's crazy. Our biggest risk is outliving your money. And so you take a situation where you have a couple and then one of them dies and then has a longevity situation on their hands, and now they're paying taxes as a single filer, and then you have a longevity situation. Well, their money's not going to last because they're going to be hammered with those taxes, and their after-tax availability is just not going to be that high. So, but back to the annuity and the bonus situation. Our software actually takes the bonus and does all the conversion math after accounting for that bonus. So you take the bonus and it does all the conversion math and shows the impact of that, and then it runs side by side. Here's what it looks like if we have the bonus. So for instance, you have 5% interest rate, if that's the assumed interest rate, well, what does that look like with or without the bonus? And the difference can be $500,000 to $1 million bucks, depending on the size of the account between now and age 95. Also, we can do the same thing with lifetime guaranteed income. So assuming we have a guaranteed lifetime income amount, we can look at that and say, okay, where would the 5% account run out of money if it was withdrawing the same amount of money? And it runs out around 84, 85, where the guaranteed account runs to 95, 100, or whatever. It just takes that longevity risk completely off the table. So it doesn't make sense to go to all the work to convert and remove the tax liability and the future tax increases and then leave longevity risk and volatility on the table. So with a properly structured annuity that's taking advantage of mortality credits for the longevity factor and putting everything together and giving that guarantee, you can solve everything at once. So our software gives you the ability to illustrate a growth scenario, so utilizing the bonus or not utilizing the bonus, a lifetime guaranteed income level, lifetime guaranteed income scenario where it's guaranteed, or a performance-based income where the income increases, but it's not guaranteed, it's based on performance. But then every year, once income starts, it can never go down, but it can continue to increase. Obviously, that has the most potential. It's astronomical how large the income can go to with those types of accounts at a relatively conservative interest rate, like 4 or 5%, but it's not guaranteed. But you have something there. If somebody just wants to grow the account, maybe they feel like they're going to take it out and do something else with it at 75 or 85, they have that opportunity, guaranteed or increasing. So, and our software interacts perfectly. It matches the way the carriers do the calculations perfectly, only we add in all the conversion math. So it's a complete picture, because you can be spending tens of thousands of dollars for your firm, for your advisors to have software that only operates on a calculation that doesn't take into account anything with a bonus or anything to do with any of these other guarantees that we're talking about. So it's a complete solution. And the other thing is the speed, Tom. In 35 seconds, I can do the inputs and have a complete blueprint for somebody. We can change one parameter and it changes everything else. Within it, we can change the tax bracket that we want to go to, the top tax bracket. We call that the maximum tax bracket rate. We can change that. We can change the assumed interest rate. And so it's kind of like we can just dial something in a smile and say cheese and get it exactly what somebody wants. So your job is to make it easy for somebody to assess that situation.
You mentioned mortality credits, and I've been calling mortality credits a mini miracle, because if you think about it, the insurance company doesn't know when I'm going to die. They don't know when you're going to die. But they do know how long everybody watching this show is going to live, almost to the exact day. And because of that, they can pay each and every one of us as though they knew exactly when we're going to die. Some people are going to die early. Some people are going to live long. But everybody's going to get that higher paycheck for the rest of their life, because every check you get from an income annuity is composed of 3 parts. Principal, anybody can give you that. Interest, anybody can give you that. But it's the mortality credits that only a life insurance company can manufacture. Mortality credits. Stocks can't pay it, bonds can't pay it, Bitcoin can't pay it. Only some form of annuity can pay mortality credits. How do you talk about mortality credits with advisors or with clients?
Well, I just think about it like I don't know how far back this goes, several hundred years ago, that's something called tontine contracts. And a tontine contract would be you and I get together with five other friends, we put money in a pile, and the last one living gets to keep all the money. So the mortality credits are kind of a civilized way of playing that game, but it is true, it's the last man standing. And so it's okay, you give up the benefit. If you happen to be on the wrong side of that equation, then it benefits the people that are on the other side of that equation, but you take that risk off the table. So you're not just looking, once again, you're not just looking to eliminate the tax. You have to solve for this longevity risk, or you're going to have a problem.
Another thing your software does are the tax withdrawals. I mean, it can really figure out dollar for dollar. Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, it calculates the tax based on the maximum tax bracket that we do not want to exceed. So when we were developing the software, we would call those constraints. So we developed a constraint so that marginal tax bracket is the primary constraint. Then the other constraint was we don't want the balance to fall below the starting amount. So the idea is the perfect scenario from a consumer's perspective is I don't want to go into a higher tax bracket and I don't want to pull money out of another account. And oh, by the way, make sure I don't lose any money, because if I'm a 401k millionaire, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and be a 401k 800,000-aire. I like where everything are and where things are, and I like that balance. I like the feeling of knowing I have that $1 million set aside in my 401k. Even though it's a joint account, you're in business with the IRS, and they can change the rules on their side of the deal as it goes along. It's still that comfort that I know I have my $1 million set aside in my 401k. People aren't used to telling themselves, I really only have $610,000 in my 401k, but that's the reality. So we want to keep that balance. And so through the conversion and a combination of the interest, the bonus, the credits, and everything else, the balance never drops below. It either stays the same or goes higher. It just takes a little bit of time for that conversion to happen, but then we're solving for all 3 primary constraints. And for you advisors out there, having the ability to construct the blueprint, use a properly structured annuity that gives the client exactly what they want and remove the negatives, that's very, very powerful.
How can someone become a Roth Blueprint trained advisor?
They can get a hold of us, probably want to get a hold of us through Annuity OS, which stands for annuityoperating-system.com. Go there, click on contact us, reach out. We're going to be reaching out, pretty heavily to the market here in the next few months, making this available, building a network, because we're not only going to be driving consumers to do the Roth blueprints, we need to connect those consumers with advisors that understand the process, understand the math, and know how to structure these plans that are really effective for people doing the conversion. Because at the end of the day, the only way we're going to be able to move 1 million people to tax-free, Tom, is if we can empower enough advisors to do this correctly and really have a methodology that they know this is the math, and they can stand behind the math, and they know what they're doing, and they can evaluate, do I do this or do I not do this? And the mistake is not doing it. The mistake is not assessing whether or not you should do it or not.
Thank you, Steve, for joining me today, and thank you for watching another episode of Financial Freedom with Tom Hegner.